I don't trust you. I'm not sure you're doing anything wrong, but I don't trust you. That statement stings when it's a one-on-one conversation, but it really smarts when you say it at a large public gathering. Well, that is how counties felt with a bill that surfaced during the legislature this session. Welcome to the county seat. I'm Chad Booth. Last week, this bill was the most urgent issue facing counties at their weekly strategy meeting at the Capitol. The vote was unanimous in opposition to the bill. As of this Wednesday, the bill was gone. That's how lawmaking works. But it also is part of the process that the bill may come back in the future. So we are going to go ahead and have the conversation that we recorded the day before the bill failed, just in case it returns. You see, oversight is a good thing for government accountability, but too much can be a bad thing. So let's get started this week with Maggie Kay and the basics.
If you listen to the news, you will hear a great deal about government oversight. But what is it? According to Wikipedia, government oversight is defined as the reviewing and supervision of government agencies, programs, activities, and policy implementation to assure that the executive branch of government conforms with the intent of that legislative body's laws or ordinances. It's also supposed to make sure that public monies are spent efficiently and honestly. So, how is that working out? Well, today we are going to consider 4 things you should know about government oversight in the basics. Number 1. Where did oversight come from? The first federal law concerning oversight was passed in 1816, creating the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. And for over a century, that was the main investigative committee in the U.S. House of Representatives. More recently, individual committees have been given direct oversight powers as well within their area of legislation. That's probably a good thing. I mean, how else are they supposed to know if the laws they have already passed are working? Number 2. Is oversight only a federal thing? No. As a matter of fact, almost every level of government has some form of oversight built into it. As an example, Utah State has the auditor's office, which is elected. That makes the auditor directly accountable to us as citizens. His job is to check on all state and local governments, agencies, boards that are public, like school boards or water conservancy boards, and investigate their books and procedures for tracking how money is spent and if they're following the law correctly. Counties and cities have auditors too. The legislative branch has the office of the legislative auditor, who does the same kind of work for the state legislature. Then add to that the individual committees of the House and the Senate, who have their own powers of oversight, and you have a lot of checking up on how laws are being followed and how money is being spent. So what powers do they have to investigate? Well, that just happens to be number 3 on our list. Oversight committees have the right to call hearings, request information from government agencies, and the power to subpoena individuals and records. And they have the power to hold individuals in contempt if they do not comply. Which leads us to number 4. Can they arrest anyone? No, they can't. They can only recommend that an agency change their procedure or recommend that charges be filed by the appropriate law enforcement peeps. In the case of the legislature, their only real power is to go back to the drawing board and fix the law that they passed in the first place, which is what most oversight committees do. And that is why oversight committees were created. So why, with all of this oversight, is the legislature considering a joint oversight committee of their own who will have the power to review all state branches of government except their own, and review not only law and bank accounts, but ordinances and rules made by other branches of government? It seems that we elect local officials to make rules and ordinances to govern our communities, and with this bill, the legislature will be the one determining if the local officials get a gold star on their forehead. Well, the answer to this is far above my pay grade, so I will leave that to Chad when we welcome back for the discussion on the county seat.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls? Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River? No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
It's one more, here we go again. I tell myself I'm not enough, but one more time is not enough. One last kiss and then you were gone, and I'm here wishing you could stay a little longer. Stay a little longer. Wishing you could stay a little longer.
The Utah Farm Bureau began as a collection of farmers supporting each other to raise the food we enjoy. Today, Farm Bureau membership encompasses everyone, whether ranchers, growers, or just everyday folks like you and me. Members enjoy discounts on items like vehicles and ATVs, or insurance that's very affordable. You don't have to be a farmer to join, and dues are small, but together we make a big difference in keeping our food supply local and abundant. Join Utah Farm Bureau.
Welcome back to the county seat. For our discussion today, we are going to dive into House Bill 175, which appeared and became quite an issue for local governments across the state and the legislature this year. Joining us for the conversation, CEO of the Utah Association of Counties, Adam Troop, and Executive Director of the Utah League of Cities and Towns, Cameron Deal. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. But what is House Bill 175? Why is this just created a little firestorm up here at the Capitol?
It's created a firestorm not just from county officials and city officials, but also from elected school board members and district members from around the state. The reason for the firestorm is that this bill would create a 9-member legislative committee consisting entirely of legislators. So that's less than 10% of the legislative body, mind you, that would have the purview and the authority to examine the effectiveness or the efficiency of any local government ordinance, whether it's a county ordinance, a school board vote, or a city ordinance. That oversight committee could essentially call a city or county up to testify about the effectiveness or efficiency of that particular ordinance. Essentially, this bill creates a chilling effect on every local government official in the state. Going forward, any local government official is going to be looking over his or her shoulder, wondering if the vote I'm going to cast today is going to be called in question by an oversight committee tomorrow. We think that is terrible policy. We think it's terrible precedent. We think it's micromanagement at the worst possible level, and it's very much state overreach.
And it's also really an expansion of state bureaucracy from our point of view, but it's not really bureaucracy because the obvious intent is to be able to reach into, into local governments, into local issues, and evaluate from the point of view of those members on that committee whether or not those governmental entities are doing things properly. That's really not appropriate. The state should set high-level goals, high-level expectations, and then let the locals do what they're supposed to be doing.
If there was a criminal act or if there was fraud, there are already tools in place, whether it's the justice system or the state auditor's office, or if it's an ethical question, you have the Political Subdivisions Ethics Commission or independent ethics commissions around the state. What you're talking about is the state actually weighing in on how local governments are governing.
So if this committee could have authority to request audit or request information about how a local government is spending its funds or how they're imposing an ordinance, how they're applying an ordinance, they don't have to have a new committee to do this. There's a legislative auditor that can come in and look at what's being done with the funds and how the funds that the legislature appropriates are spent. Why create a new body to come and say, well, let's look at this and then we'll report to the legislative auditor general? We're not quite clear on what the point is either.
Well, if you already got so much oversight and they're doing their job right, what's one more? How is this one different?
The reason it's different is now you have an oversight committee that connotes a distrust of local government that will have the purview of reviewing any ordinance that a local government passes. So we're not talking about alleged misuse of public funds. We are talking about just the sheer efficiency of how local government operates. That's different. The majority of the bill focuses on this push and pull between the legislative branch and the executive branch. Mm-hmm. And if the legislature wants to have that debate with the governor's office, that's up to them. But as soon as they bring local governments into it, essentially what they're saying is we as a 9-member oversight committee feel like we have a better perspective and a better understanding of what you should do as a city or as a county or as a school board, and that's unacceptable to us. Okay. Our voters elected county commissioners or county council or city mayors and city council members. We should be accountable to them.
I would imagine if I were a voter in Wayne County and there was nobody on that board from Wayne County, and Wayne County came up with an ordinance, I'd be hard-pressed to say the legislature would really know the localities of Wayne County or Loa or whatever you want to pick. I didn't want to leave you out, Cameron, so I figured I better put a city in there. In their ordinance, because they're not really represented there. I mean, not even through their legislative district.
Correct. You have 6 House members, and there are 75 total House members. So it's roughly 8–9% of the House of Representatives that would be on this committee, 3 out of 29 senators. So you're right, the vast majority of the state would not be represented on this committee, yet they would be issuing recommendations about the actions of local governments who are elected by those local voters in Loa or in Wayne County.
Well, so do you have the ability, I mean, does this organization have the ability to actually tell cities, we don't think your ordinance is a good ordinance and you need to change it?
This committee would issue a recommendation. But let's just think through the practical effect of that. If you are on the city council in Loa and someone files a complaint with this oversight committee about an ordinance in Loa, then the oversight committee makes their recommendation that Loa should change the ordinance. Now you're a member of the city council in Loa and you've just had the state tell you you should make a change. So even if it doesn't have the effect of law, there is this negative connotation back to the residents of Loa of, well, why is the city council going against the state oversight committee? And we think that's just a very dangerous precedent.
And let me add to that, the portion that is not addressed in that, that's the simple process for how it happens. But the reality is, what does Loa City do? What does Wayne County do to defend their ordinance or to get the information together? What kind of evidence and information is this committee going to bring forward? It creates this entire structure of this need to come forward, bring information, bring evidence of whatever the question is that people are raising, and then have it debated publicly when in fact there isn't any cause for that, right? This is not something that's somebody's uncovered this big problem. It's just more government intrusion into what's going on the local level.
What if you had an opposing point of view? Say one of the standing committees in their oversight function makes a recommendation one way and this one makes a recommendation the opposite way. Then what would happen?
Then you put local elected officials in a terrible predicament where the legislature is basically saying, we don't trust you. And not only do we not trust you, we disagree on how we don't trust you. And that's, again, that's unacceptable to us. We are accountable to our voters.
What do you think the fiscal note's going to be on this?
Well, the fiscal note, the last fiscal note I saw was approximately $200,000 to the state.
But see, that's the trick. You just said to the state. Mm-hmm. So $200,000 to the state, but if you're in San Juan County and all of a sudden you have to make 10 or 20 trips, has anybody tried to calculate what that cost would be to the local communities?
We're always asked for what the local government impact would be, fiscal impact would be. It's very difficult to tell in most instances. I don't think we can even hazard a guess in this that would be anywhere close to what the real number is. The difficulty is you can see what the burden will be of any of these things that take place. And again, since we don't know the scope of what's being done, we really do have a question about how often this would happen in any one instance.
They could meet weekly, they could meet annually, who knows? But that's again part of our concern about the scope of this potential oversight body.
Do you think there's enough steam behind whoever's initiating this that it could resurface itself in coming years? Or do you think if it falls by the wayside, as you guys are hoping, that it will be interred and not exhumed for further analysis?
Adam, do you have your crystal ball?
I do not. I don't have my crystal ball, but again, we come back to the same problem. We're not entirely sure what this is trying to address, what specific issues it's trying to address. So if those issues still exist in the minds of the people who are pushing the bill forward now, then yes, it'll be back.
What do you do from here? What's the best solution?
I'll say I think the best solution is for the bill to just disappear. We've looked at it. It's in the third substitute to this point, and it really is not getting any better. It's still way too broad, still essentially has the same problems it had in the first version. So it just really needs to go away, and if there are definite problems that need to be addressed in county government and city government and in school boards, and et cetera, then those ought to be taken one by one, and we ought to find out what the problem is and then come up with a solution that we can all craft or fight over, but certainly not this whole broad oversight organization that really is unfocused but way too powerful.
And we've been working hard collectively with our organizations as well as the School Boards Association and Association of Special Districts to educate legislators that there is not a need for this bill, that this bill is a quote-unquote solution in search of a problem. And so even if the bill doesn't go anywhere this year, we're hoping that our educational efforts will ensure that it doesn't come back in future years either.
Okay, so what do people need to do? I mean, there are people watching the show, they just got the point, they went, oh, wow, okay, I hadn't thought about it. I better do something because this sounds like a real Pandora's box. What do they do?
Well, I guess I would say that the main thing to do is be aware of what the conditions are and who the people are involved in your local government, whether it's from our perspective the city or the town or the county. Be aware of who those people are, be aware of what the issues are, and be an informed voter. And the reason I say that is if people are connected to what's going on in their community and in their political subdivision, whatever it is, then they'll have an idea about whether or not that work is being done well, whether people are applying ordinances well, whether they're spending money well, whatever those issues that they're concerned about are. Be aware who those people are. They're all close to you and they're all local. It doesn't matter whether you're in Salt Lake City or if you're in Panguitch. They're all close to you. And I think the issue is be aware of that and be in contact.
How many groups do you have supporting this, your position on this right now?
All of the organizations that represent local elected officials are united in opposition to the bill. So that's the Utah Association of Counties, the League of Cities and Towns, the Association of Special Districts, and the School Boards Association. And then we know of many individual school board members, county commissioners, and city mayors and council members who have spoken up in opposition to it.
So it's pretty broad support. If this thing is still alive at the point this show airs, which will be 3 days from the time we're sitting here talking about it, and people have a chance to respond, what should they do?
We request that you, in fact, not just request, we urge you to contact your senators. The bill may be heard by the House of Representatives in the next couple of days, so contact your House representative about your concerns on SB 175, but then certainly urge senators to oppose it if the bill gets over to the Senate.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate your taking the time. I know you're very busy. In fact, you're like 7 minutes overdue to your next meeting, so
no worries.
We'll excuse you. We will be back. We're going to take a personal look at Oversight and kind of get a feel for what it looks like on the county seat.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
The Layton Hills Mall offers more than just shopping. Bring the whole family and enjoy SeaQuest Interactive Aquarium to feed the fish and exotic birds, hold live reptiles, and even swim with the stingrays. Or pump up the action and visit Dartside, Utah's premier soft foam dart tag arena. And don't forget the Great Room Escape, where you can challenge your friends to solving mysteries inside themed rooms. So come and experience great fun at the Layton Hills Mall and visit playindavis.com for other great activities.
All local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted, and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own. Discover local food.
Welcome back to the county seat. As we said in the beginning of the show, the oversight bill is gone, but it may come back. So that raises the question, what happens when a higher level of government projects itself on a lower one? What do the consequences look like? It happens between state government and local governments, but it also happens between the feds and the state, as we learned this week on the ground.
Hello, my name's Brian Bremner, and I'm the Garfield County Engineer, which includes responsibility over Garfield County's public lands. Garfield County is a county about the size of Connecticut, approximately 3.3 million acres, 90 to 93% of which is federal land. So a large part of our responsibilities in the county is managing federal lands. When I first understood the federal plan and their reliance on Fish and Wildlife Service decisions, I knew that it would not meet our specific requirements. Their plan was broad, general, landscape level, and basically established on conditions in the Wyoming flatlands. Our area is totally different than that. We're located on the fringe of sage-grouse habitat, and our sage-grouse act differently and have different habitat requirements than those in Wyoming. We knew immediately that the plan would not fit our specific situation and quite likely not fit many of the other situations in counties neighboring ours and sage-grouse management areas in south central Utah.
Over here, within months, studies indicated within 2 years, but actuality was within months of the treatments. Sage-grouse had already moved back into the area, re-established historic leks. There were antelope, mule deer, and other wildlife that were benefiting. Springs came back, and the ground is better.
Federal agencies manage land. They do not manage wildlife populations. The state of Utah manages the bird itself. Landscape level plans directed from those outside of the area or that cover multi-states or a whole state at a time can't fit everywhere. It's like having one size of clothes and saying it has to fit everybody. Some it's going to be too tight, and only a very small percentage will it actually work.
We need to take a proactive approach and go out and do good, not just sit back and prevent people from doing anything.
So what are the takeaways from all of this? I think the answer lies far from the efforts of state representatives or local leaders and the struggle for who knows best how to serve local communities. Neither one of them are the true experts. I will share my ideas on who that person is when we come back to the county seat.
ATV? Check. Four-wheel driving? Check. Bouldering? Check. Mountain biking? Check. Hiking? Check. River rafting? Check. Adventure is about more than just crossing activities off of a list, but hey, if you can find a place that gives you everything you're looking for, all the better. In Emery County, you'll find the San Rafael swell, trails, lakes, and the small-town hospitality you're looking for. San Rafael Country, in the heart of Utah. Visit us and check something off your list.
Look south to adventure. Look south to beauty. Look south to San Juan County. Out here, the road goes on forever, and what you'll find will change how you see the world. Climb on your OHV and discover forgotten landscapes and vistas that challenge the imagination. From Blanding and Monticello to the cliff faces of Monument Valley, we're open and ready for you to explore. San Juan County, Utah's Canyon Country.
In a place that is beyond words, there is nothing to be said, except take your time in Bryce Canyon Country.
Welcome back to the county seat. In my very first statement of this show, when I said it's a matter of trusting, the question is, who should we trust? Well, here's my 2 cents worth on the subject. The answer is, trust yourself, you and me. Don't get me wrong, it's essential to a republic form of government that we have checks and balances in place to maintain proper accountability for both the funds entrusted to our leaders, but also for our rights and liberties that we entrust to them as well. Without oversight, the temptation to collect power and spend money becomes very tempting. The problem is that we are looking in the wrong place for the best oversight of leaders and policies. The failure, as Adam suggested, is in you and me. I want to ask this question. How many of you have actually been to a county commission meeting? How many have ever looked at an agenda for one? Have you gone to a local school board meeting, looked at a budget, called and asked a water conservancy district how they're spending our money? You see, the founders of our governments, both federal and state, wisely placed oversight directly in our hands and gave us ballots to enforce it. To do that, we need to invest some of our time in community governance. We have an open meeting law here in the state of Utah. Governance makes and takes place in public. But if the public does not show up, and more importantly, speak up, we have effectively abrogated our chance to be in charge of good oversight. You see, when you turn oversight over to someone else, they start to gain power over those you give oversight to. At least you live in a community with your local leaders, and it's pretty easy to get to them. Look them in the eye and ask them, what in the heck are you doing if it doesn't seem right? Problems of corruption always start when someone isn't looking. That someone is supposed to be you and me. This simple rule applies to so many problems we deal with. Oversight, caucus versus primary, bonding, deficit spending, they all run into trouble when we don't show up. If we showed up more and paid more attention while we are there, most of these types of bills wouldn't come up. They wouldn't need to. I'll bet even the sponsors of this bill would agree with me. Thanks for watching today. Now, speak up. Go to our social media, share this with your friends, and let's start a dialogue about this. I want to hear your opinions. I'm Chad Booth, and we will see you next week on the County Seat.